So it is on this note that I want to invite Cecilia. I want to invite, so Cecilia will be taking us on overview, the program overview and outlook. Yes, Cecilia is in the house. Cecilia, please.
Thank you very much. Good day, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon or good evening, according to where you're seated. I'm in Brussels, so it's the beginning of the afternoon. Thank you for having me again. This is my second time in this very active and wonderful network of practitioners. And my idea today, or my aim, is to talk you through the Africa EU Space Partnership Program, which is a Global Gateway flagship initiative. So I will try to give you a little bit of an overview. What is the program? What is the aim of the program? How it was built and what we are aiming at? And then more detail on concrete opportunity, I guess, will rather come from the speaker after me. So, as I was saying, today I will present you the Africa EU Space Partnership Program, which is a global gateway flagship initiative. So to start from the title, what is Global Gateway? The Global Gateway is an EU international strategy, as well as the EU offer to partner country to accelerate the fair and green transition and to meet infrastructure needs. So already on this sentence, I think we have three important elements, which is infrastructure, green transition, and fair transition. And these are a little bit the leitmotif that are guiding all our activity in the context of the Global Gateway. The Global Gateway aim at focusing on five thematic area, five topics, which are considered to be priority from the EU point of view. And those are education and research, health, transport, climate and energy, and digital. And although it is true that I forgot to introduce myself, I'm Cecilia Donati. I work in the European Commission at the Department for International Partnership in the unit called Digital Transformation. So although I belong to a unit called Digital Transformation, I think we can all say and agree that Earth observation can be in support of all this topic, all this thematic. So it's really a cross-cutting enabler, and it's part of many programs. We have a specific program, which I will present today, that really focus on fostering the space sector and ecosystem, so that where space and Earth observation, not only, but also GNSS, are the focus of the topic of cooperation. But there are many other programs in which Earth observation enter, and it's used in order to achieve the objective of the program. And I will give you some example at the very end of my presentation. So the Global Gateway is also about how we go for the implementation. So the new approach that we are trying to stimulate and bringing together, it's what we call in the EU jargon Team Europe, as well as 360 approach. And as the word say, it's really trying to be as comprehensive as possible in order to bring on the table a stacked offer to the partners. So comprehensive, not only in terms of content, but also in terms of implementing partner and institution involved. This is the reason why you see that we are teaming up with member states, with European key institutions, like in the space landscape in Euro. We can think, of course, about institutions like EUMETSAT, as well as the European Space Agency and others. We are teaming up with the private sector for the implementation of the program, international like-minded partner, and of course, development financial institution and international financial institution. So this is a little bit to set the frame. So this is the broad strategy that is leading a little bit the way forward and how to bring alive new program. But of course, when we talk about cooperation with African country and continent in the area of Earth observation and space in general, so GNSS as well, we should start by building on the common experience and on the big achievement, because we need to recognize that we are not, of course, starting from scratch, and a lot has been already done in the area of Earth observation specifically. We have many programs, many years of cooperation. Here we have more than 20 years of cooperation, more than 200 million euros invested. And I'm sure you know many of this program, and the most recent one is the GMES in Africa program. That is really the key, success story in area of cooperation. But of course, we also have JPO and ASECNA and CLIMSA, which are the other programs that are really all looking at utilizing Earth observation for specific purpose and services. So we are building on the past and the achievement that we have reached so far, and we have to recognize all the work that has gone into that. And conscious of this new approach of the Global Gateway, we are looking at the future in order to build a renew and a stronger partnership. And here you see a little bit what I call the ingredient of the Africa-EU Space Partnership Program. So there are a few words that have been highlighted, which I believe are the very important one. So it's about working together on a long-term partnership. And when we say working together, it's really like having a discussion, a partnership approach, and trying to understand as much as possible what is needed and how, from the EU side and the achievement that EU has been developing the last year through the EU space program, we can support achieving this ambition. It's about, of course, streamline cooperation and enhancing benefit across component and space technology. It's about combining different space technology, Earth observation, satellite navigation, and also connectivities when it's needed. The third one, it's maybe what has changed in the last year and what the Global Gateway strategy has brought forward, which is increased focus on private sector. And then, of course, it's building on the EU space program, so Copernicus, Galileo, EGNOS, and so on and so forth. So with that in mind, thinking also, realizing that from the EU side, what we call the EUTEC offer builds on the two main programs that I already mentioned, the GNSS and Earth observation, which according to the latest market survey bring promising result in terms of downstream market. Having that in mind, we have discussed with our partner, specifically the African Union and the Africa Space Agency, what the Africa-EU Space Partnership Program could look like, and we come to this program that you see here. So the Africa-EU Space Partnership Program is a commitment from the EU of 100 million euro, and it's elaborated or building around these three pillars. So there is a strong focus on partnership, recognizing and acknowledging the fact that the landscape in Africa is extremely dynamic and evolving very fast, with more and more space agency at national level, but also at continental level. So the recent inauguration of the Africa Space Agency, it's really a game changer in the scenario, in the landscape. There is a strong focus on green transition. So building again on what I mentioned at the very beginning, Global Gate is about supporting fair and green transition. So how can space technology meet environmental needs and support the development of program services, sorry. And then last but not least is about supporting private sector, not only continental and national private sector, but also facilitating a good dynamics between the two continents, Africa and the EU. Of course, as I said already, is building on Copernicus and EGNOS, and has been co-create. This is a word that I think is very important in our program. It's about co-creation with the African Union Commission at that time, and now with Africa Space Agency. So the first 45 million implementing the program have been designed like you see in this three component. The program started at January 2025. The first and the third component is implemented by European Space Agency and the Africa Space Agency in close cooperation. And the second component, which has a focus on early warning, is being implemented by EUMETSAT, ECNWF, and AUC Commission, specifically the ARBE department. You will have this slide, so you will be able also to go to check the QR code and visit the landing page of the program, where you will have a bit of more information for the different component and the different activity targeting which are targeted in the program. Of course, we should not forget that everything we do is to facilitate the implementation of the SDG, and I think the program take quite a number of those. You might ask why I've not talked about activities and the specific activities. Well, because this is really in the end of our partner that are implementing the program that you see here. Of course, this is a list of potential activity that we have defined in close cooperation during the contractualization phase, but I'm sure that they will be able to give you a much more detailed information about what is foreseen and what are the opportunities stemming from the program. So the key takeaway is that at least from my side, and I hope all the partners that have been involved in this journey can share the feeling. This is a win-and-win partnership really built on co-creation, where ownership and sustainability are extremely important throughout the conceptualization process, where we have put a strong user-driven approach as well as a peer-to-peer approach. As you have seen it in the slide earlier, each time there is a European entity and an African entity working together to define the activity and to implement the program. And with that, I'm sorry if I was a little bit too long. I stopped sharing and I finished my presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Cecilia, for that insightful presentation. Yeah, the key message there is that we need to work together. And then that message is very, very clear. If we work together, we achieve so much. There is an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, then you go alone. But if you want to achieve so much, then work together. And so that is the message there. So without much ado, I want to give Meshack of the African Space Agency the opportunity here to share with us priorities and opportunities. Meshack?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this invitation, Dr. Oku, and thanks, Cecilia, for that elaborate presentation, which has done most of the job for me. So I hope I will not take long. And it's good to see you again. And a lot of collaborators that I see online, Professor Baji and the team, a lot of people that I see, I know we have collaborated for many years. So I will just go ahead and share the presentation. Okay. I hope you can hear me clearly and you can see the presentation as well. My voice is a little bit down today. I come from the African Space Agency. Most of you probably have heard of it. The African Space Agency has come along as a concrete evolution from the African Space Program, which was defined through a space policy and strategy, and its priorities were identified in what we call the Africa Agenda 2063. This is the master plan or the compass for the African Union, from 2013 to 2063, looking at what we want to achieve and become. It's so commonly, known as the Africa we want by 2063. And we pulled out most of the priorities and goals and most of the ambitions from the Agenda 2063 and we mapped out how space can be of help to achieve them. And we, just as it is in the SDGs, so it's true in the Agenda 2063 that most of these can be achieved through space. And from that, the African Space Program was crafted. Initially started with the African Space Policy and Strategy journey that was adopted in 2016 And then from there, we defined the 4 main domains that we want to focus on, starting with Earth observation, which is mainly I think it's the mainstay for the economy of the continent when it comes to space, the space technology. Then we looked at navigation, positioning, satellite communication, and astronomy. Those are the main priorities for the space program. But of course, things have been evolving, and this policy and strategy will be reviewed in the next few years so that it can be updated to capture the emerging technologies. And the goals we are looking at, now the institution, the African Space Agency, was formed through this policy and strategy. And the main goal for it is to coordinate, to create a well-coordinated and integrated African space program that is true to the cause of social needs, the economic needs, and the political needs of the continent, as well as creating a regulatory framework for the African space program, because we are in an international community. The goals for the African space strategy are almost the same. Is to have a space-derived, to have space-derived products and services that are used for decision making and addressing the economic, again, the socio-economical, political, and environmental challenges of the continent, and to ensure indigenous capability. So we have moved down further to create the African Space Agency, which is the main institution that is the custodian of the African space policy and strategy. And this is how the organigram looks like. We have just started the process, and we have the first level of oversight, which is in place, which is the African Space Council. And then we are moving forward to start hiring for the operational program or for the operational institution itself, starting with the Director General. Again, the slides will be shared with you, so you don't have to get all this for now, but this is just an overview of how the directorates have been defined. We have the supportive directorates for corporate services. We have the policy and external relations. We have directorate for space applications, which is more relevant to this discussion. And there we have the 4 domains again: Earth observation, satellite communication, navigation, and astronomy. And there is a strong emphasis on the Earth observation for obvious reasons that this is the main technology that Africa has known for a long time, and it's more relatable in different sectors. This is the council. So we have a president and a vice president, and we do have the members of the Africa Space Council. This is the main oversight for the agency. Besides the operations, so they will be overseeing most of the operational activities on the African Space Agency, and there will be an advisory committee that will also advise the council, and all that goes into the directorate or the Directorate General of the Africa Space Agency to carry out the mandate, and trickles down all the way to the programs and activities. So we have been doing a number of things in concurrent. We have been doing surveys, or what we call the baseline studies, such as Earth observation on the private sector. This one was done a few years ago, and we mapped out how many or how the ecosystem is distributed on the continent. And there was an impressive growth in terms of the startups that are doing Earth observation, and they continue to grow. Again, that highlights the importance of the evolving services and needs for Earth observation, or where Earth observation can be applied to improve services. And we have someone mentioned GMS in Africa, and Cecilia, thank you for highlighting that. GMS in Africa has been to us like a yardstick for how the services can be developed and make sense to the continent or to the users on the continent. And this has been a great success. And many of you here are already participants to the GMS in Africa program. And we did, so GMS in Africa has gone through 2 phases. And during the first phase, we did an agreement, AUC-EC agreement on Copernicus data access. And that was to facilitate, data availability for development of the services through GMS in Africa. We went further to do some baseline studies, and this was a survey and gap analysis on navigation and positioning in Africa, which again highlighted the main gaps and opportunities that we have for the continent to thrive or to have a thriving economy on navigation and positioning. again, we did baseline. I think this is the recent one. The baseline study on socioeconomic benefits of space looked at all the sectors and looked at all the domains, and each one of them, we looked at the subsectors and the sectors that use space for various services. And this was a very revealing study that gave us a lot of insights on how different applications of space can be being used on a concrete basis. And the main outcome for that is that there is more need for, or there's need for more evolved services in each and every domain, not only in Earth observation, that fits to the needs of the continent or to the users, especially the communities and what we call the end users. We have gone further to, and now, as you can see, we are in the operationalization phase of the African Space Agency, and I will touch a little bit on the New Space Partnership Program, which again, Cecilia highlighted. And we are being, the motivation here is to look at how much of economic sense we can bring to the African, what we call, the African economy itself, because there is a space industry or the space economy, and then there is the overall economy on the continent. And when we look at how space can contribute into the GDP, it's a lot that we can do, but we haven't, exploited all the opportunities. Here is just a vis-a-vis to check what is at the global level in terms of the space economy heading to $1 trillion economy. We are here at, about 25 billion or close to 25 billion USD every year, which is a great milestone, because if you look a decade ago or 10 years ago, this figure was less than 2 digits, which is a tremendous growth within the past few years, which gives us an impression that there is a lot of demand for space services. Many governments are now budgeting for their space programs, and there is a lot of awareness that has been created over time. So we hope to get this economy up to its level, because there is a potential to grow up to $100 billion. The value of the Earth observation, which again is the mainstay for this discussion. Now, there was a study that was done about the Earth observation, and we also combined with what came out of the different baseline studies that we have done. So the African Space Program is focused on addressing Earth observation as the main economy, and over 81 application projects are currently being implemented. This has actually increased because we now have the New Space Program, which will lead to a lot of multiplied effects in terms of the applications and the programs. And about 50% of the African satellites which are in space today, they are mostly for Earth observation. And this is informed by the value that EO brings to the continent. So again, it's safe to say that Earth observation is the main economy, or what people relate with mostly, but we need to do more. And this is why the space policy and the strategy highlight that we need to develop adequate skills and expertise in Earth observation. We need to improve the EO institutions in Africa. We need to foster knowledge sharing among African experts. And this is the purpose for different projects that we bring on board as the African Space Agency. It's to foster that knowledge sharing. And GMS has been a very good use case. So if you look at the wording here, it's mostly raising, fostering, developing, and improving, meaning that we have a lot of work to do. There is some work going on, but we still have some work to do. What we can highlight here is that GMS in Africa is a good example. It created a community of practice, and it showed us a lot of opportunities and gaps that need to be focused on in the next programs. There's an evolution of different things that came out of this, and one of the communities of practice is the GMS and Africa Network of Academia. We have the Network on Flood and Wetland Management, and thank you, Professor Abaji. You have been leading this for some time, and I think this is your brainchild in terms of creating and expanding this network. Women in GMS in Africa has been so vocal. We have had a lot of tools deployed, like geoportals, learning management platform, etc. So looking forward, what do we want to do? At the EU speaker Cecilia has highlighted on the new Space Africa, the new Africa EU Space Program or partnership that has a lot of components, and there's a broad context into that, like it was said. I'll probably just focus on what we are doing at the African Space Agency level, but there is a lot more that is happening, including other domains. But mostly we are emphasizing on capacity development, and capacity here means human, technical, and institutional capacity development. We are looking at industrial partnership, and this is key because GMSN Africa has taught us a lesson that the industrial exclusion that was used, that was there in the previous programs didn't really help in closing the gaps. Now in GMSN Africa Phase 1 and 2, what we did was to bring the industry into context and the academia. And that actually built a very good hybrid mechanism in which the academia has contributed a lot in strengthening capacities, while the industry has contributed a lot in the last mile connectivity of end users with the services. We focus more on academia strengthening between Europe and Africa. And there is now a more, we are not only looking at the downstream as it was the case, we are looking at the upstream as well. This is probably I think the last slide or the second last, because of time, I apologize for that. So we have already started the activities. There is the trainings for early career students and student researchers that is going on. We have been collaborating with the European Space Agency, and we have a common, or what I would call similarity between the African Space Agency and the European Space Agency. I think these are the only two regional space agencies in the world, and we are doing our best to collaborate. And one of the things that we defined was a training program. There's a training for early career and student researchers that will start in October. We have done the pre-selection. We did a call that was advertised in all platforms, and we got the student the application overwhelmingly, and we did a lot of work to select, the eligible or the qualifying students. The industrial cooperation and capacity development is another thing that the space program is focusing on. There's a high visibility of the partnership. The amount here we are talking about 45 million euro, which goes into different sectors. Continental Innovation Tender has been published already under the ESA, and those who are familiar with the ESA website, you can go and respond to some of the tenders that have already been published from the ESA side, and from the African Union side, we are doing our best to also raise awareness on these tenders, and there will be more coming up, but these are the main ones that have started already. The space early warning system in Africa is being led by our sister department, which is the DABE. It's within the African Union Commission, and we are happy to connect, if there is any need for any of the institutions here to have more information on some of these programs. Because of time, allow me to stop here, but we do have, this is the website for the African Space Agency. You can explore, and we can also, provide the website for the European Space Agency so that you explore the tenders that have already gone ahead. Thank you so much, and I look forward to more engagement and discussions.
Yeah, thank you, Meshack. Under the few minutes you've said there's so much and so much to learn, and looking forward from what your organization is doing. Here we can see that EOTEC, even in the future, will become more relevant in the future than it was even in the past. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Meshack, I say thank you for that wonderful presentation, very loaded. And then when we look forward, we see that EOTEC will become even more, every day is becoming much more relevant than even it was in the past. So we'll bring in a third presenter, Lorraine, who is of the European Organization for Exploitation of Meteorological Satellite. So, yeah, she is going to speak to us on collaborating EU agencies, perspective on the program.
Thank you very much. And thank you to my previous presenters. I hope you can hear me and see the slides okay.
Yeah, we can hear you loud.
Thank you. Okay, so today I'm here as introduced from EUMETSAT, and I'll be talking about the implementation activities that we're carrying out as part of the Africa EU Space Partnership Programme that Cecilia introduced just a couple of presentations ago. So EUMETSAT is one of the implementing partners under the second component of the programme, and this is focused on space and the green transition, and there's a special focus under this on strengthening early warnings in Africa. And given that EUMETSAT is an implementing partner, this has very tangible and direct links to the space sector in Africa and in Europe. And we'll be working along with two other implementing agencies, so the African Union and ECMWF. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the SEWA project and what the objectives are, how the different implementing agencies are involved, and how we plan to carry out those activities over the next few years. So for SEWA and under the Strengthening Early Warnings in Africa specific objectives, what we're looking to do is enhance the capacity to produce and deliver space-based services and applications utilizing data and information for early warning systems, specifically related to hazardous weather or climate events. So we're focusing on early warnings for extreme weather or for events that can be attributed to climate change. And this objective is relevant to all three implementing agencies of the project. And you can see here, as I mentioned just earlier, there are three of us, three implementing agencies working very closely together, funded by the European Commission. So we are EUMETSAT, ECMWF, which is the European Centre for Medium Range Weather Forecasts, and the African Union. And for SEWA, the three implementing agencies have the 5 outputs that we'll deliver that are listed here. And you can see that each agency has a slightly different role. So for EUMETSAT, our role primarily is focused on improving access to data for African agencies. It's also focused on something that was a political declaration some years ago, which I'm sure many people here are aware of. So the desire to establish and operate the African Meteorological Satellite Application Facility. So back in 2018, this was announced under the Abidjan Declaration that African countries would like their own SAF to be established and for them to operate it by accessing space data and information that can be utilized for various applications, including early warnings. So EUMETSAT is leading on this specific output together with other partners based in Europe and Africa. In addition, and in conjunction with our two other implementing agencies, a big theme of this project is around strengthening human capacities and communities of practice as well. So as part of our activities to install software to access the METEOSAT third generation data to produce early warning products, we'll be delivering a range of different training activities. We'll be ensuring that knowledge is shared and there's sharing and peer support across African institutions. And we'll be carrying out these activities in conjunction with ECMWF and the African Union. You can see from the table here that ECMWF will be leading primarily on the co-design and delivery of impact-based forecasting services and tools. So they'll be engaging directly with the regional climate centres in Africa, whereas EUMETSAT will be engaging with the regional specialised meteorological centres who have the World Meteorological Organization mandate for delivering severe weather forecasts. And AUC will be leading on providing this institutional framework and leadership to encourage knowledge sharing and cooperation across regions and institutions in Africa. So for EUMETSAT's role in SEWA, this has been mentioned. So Cecilia talked about other projects that have come before SEWA, many investments that have come from the European Commission, a long history of cooperation between Africa and Europe. So one of the things that we're really insisting on as part of the project is that we're building on existing know-how, on existing infrastructure and investments, and we're ensuring that what's been done prior to SEWA can be fully institutionalized, and the knowledge that's been learnt can be also documented, and this can be built on to ensure that we're not carrying out the same activities that have been done before, and to ensure that we're leveraging this long history of investment. So you can see here, so for over 20 years, the EU has been invested in assets such as Puma stations. So Met services have these to access Meteosat data to produce early warnings. And there have been many other projects that are mentioned here that Chile also talked about, such as GMAS in Africa, and the CLIMSA project, which is being implemented by the African Union. To achieve SEWA and the outputs and objectives identified, we're expecting to collaborate and engage various entities and experts from both Europe and Africa, given that this is very much a strategic cooperation between the two continents. We want to bring together these complementary knowledges to ensure that capacity can really be built and institutionalized in African organizations for the long-term sustainability of the project. So just now going into some of our outputs that we'll be working on as EUMETSAT. So the first was around data access. So a couple of the main activities that we'll be implementing are the connection to EUMETCAST. So this is the data dissemination service from EUMETSAT to Africa. So we want to ensure that as many African institutions, so the Met services and the regional specialized centers, can access the Meteosat third generation satellites data, so they can have the most up-to-date data that comes at a much higher resolution and speed than previous generations of satellites. And this will be done via Puma stations. So as mentioned, the CLIMSA project is currently delivering Puma stations in the African Met services, and EUMETSAT is also working in parallel to try and ensure that as many of those African centers can access the EUMETCAST data stream as possible. So in order to access EUMETCAST, ideally, African institutions would have a connection to a high-speed internet provider, perhaps through their national research and education networks. So this is something that's also being explored and being secured throughout the SEWA project. In parallel, we're also carrying out an activity which is slightly tangential to the Meteosat third generation data access. So MTG data is really used for nowcasting purposes. Nowcasting is a very short-term forecasting product, and different developments of different forecasts that can be provided up to 6 hours in the future. So it's not long-term forecasting, but it's really useful for being very specific about the location of high-impact weather, and where there are really high-impact events taking place, we can then take very determined actions based on potentially very negative events that could have big impact in different locations. But we also are looking to upgrade some RAS stations in Africa. So the RAS stations refer to Regional Retransmission Service stations, and these ensure that there's access to different polar orbiting satellites in the African centers that have access and have these stations. And that data from the polar orbiting satellites is most relevant to numerical weather prediction models. So this is longer timescale than the nowcasting. And we see a really big benefit for Africa in having access to this data to feed into the global system, to the WMO DBNet, and also in strengthening African numerical weather prediction, which would really benefit from more observations. So this is something that we're carrying out in parallel. In addition, to support both the nowcasting and potentially the RAS access, we're going to be looking into cloud computing provision. So for some of the centers that we're working with may not have the computing capacity to carry out local processing of the MTG data to produce products. So something that we want to ensure is provided would be cloud computing facilities for those centers that don't have the high performance computing that might be needed. So that's something that will be provided too. On the AMSAF, so I mentioned that there was a declaration in 2018, the Abidjan Declaration, and this has been reinforced in 2022 through the Dar es Salaam high-level statement. So this is a very long-term historical desired need for African countries to develop their own early warnings through the use of new meteorological satellite data. So the output 2.2 mentioned would be EUMETSAT working with both a consortium of contractors who will bid into a technical assistance service to assist the 4 African centers that we're working directly with to establish the AMSAF. And those 4 centers, the RSMCs, based in Senegal, Kenya, South Africa, and Cameroon, would also be engaged through a contract with EUMETSAT in order to ensure that their staff can be fully involved in this establishment, can take part in training, can understand how the software works, and can maintain it and operate it over time. In parallel to this as well, there'll be a separate invitation to tender to develop an AMSAF roadmap to ensure that with this initial investment and the initial products that will be developed and the service that will be developed through SEWA, we'll have a longer term vision of the kind of products that different African centers and regions prioritize that can be developed through new generation satellite data. And as mentioned, everything that we're doing in terms of the data access, the establishment of the AMSAF, will be fully supported through different training and capacity development activities. EUMETSAT carries out training closely in cooperation with different VLab centers in Africa mentioned here, so YAMAC, IMTR, SOARS, and Meteor Morocco. And as business as usual, we'll be engaging in our training activities with those centers and delivering training to access the MTG data through that training plan. The focus, as mentioned, will be on the infrastructure, so maintenance, operation, development of different applications using the satellite data for nowcasting, and we'll also be looking at carrying out testbed activities. So I'm not sure if people are aware of what a testbed is, but this refers to a meteorological event where we bring different people together from communities, such as a Met service, from users of forecasts, and we try to consolidate the full value chain of the data access to actual application in different sectors or different organizations and communities. So this then allows us to see how the data could be valuable, how the warnings can be utilized, if they can be effective, if people really have a desire to have specific warnings. So this then pushes on knowledge, on nowcasting, where it can be applied most usefully, also engages a wider community in the value of nowcasting. So for the establishment of the AMSAF, I'll briefly talk about the scope of the activities. I mentioned that we'll have an open competition tender for a technical assistance service to our African partners, and those partners are listed here. So we'll have 4 regional instances of the AMSAF established in Senegal, Kenya, South Africa, and Cameroon. We'll also be working directly with ACMAT as the African Continental Coordinator for the applications for climate and weather services. So they'll be providing continental leadership, capacity development, documentation of lessons learned, and ensuring that we are collaborating fully across the continent and establishing and utilising the knowledge. The initial activities on the establishment of AMSAF began last December. So our African partners visited EUMETSAT in Darmstadt, Germany. You can see the picture here. And we had some initial consultations on the requirements of the centres and how the AMSAF might be tailored to those different regional needs and priorities and institutional setup. So I just wanted to talk about some planned procurements. So the SEWA project will be delivered through different procurements of the D3 implementing agencies. The African Union, as stated, is responsible on coordinating much of the knowledge and policies on disaster risk reduction relative to SEWA, related to SEWA, and they will be ensuring that we're coordinating in this institutional framework through AMCOMET and AMHUAS. AMHUAS is the African Meteorological Strategy, Continental Strategy for establishing early warnings. And as part of this, the AUC will be ensuring that knowledge is really shared across regions through different events such as continental meetings and a specific SEWA forum. In addition to that, ECMWF and EUMETSAT are fully engaging the African Union in the procurements that we're carrying out as part of our implementation activities. So we have experts from the African Union involved in our procurements. We're ensuring that we're utilising their knowledge as fully as possible and that we're aligning with their strategies and their strategic approach on disaster risk reduction and meteorology. For EUMETSAT, much of the activities this year are related to the establishment of the African Meteorological SAF, Satellite Applications Facility. And the activities here are around the procurement and the procurement plans. So I mentioned the open competition, technical assistance, ITT that we're launching in the next few weeks. We're also setting up these 4 direct contracts with the African centres we're working with to engage 5 African centres altogether. So the Central African RSMC Cameroon will be engaged through an ACMAD contract. So ACMAD as Continental Coordinator will be linking in the staff resources and engagement from Cameroon. And then in 2026 and 27, we expect the AMSAF activities will begin in earnest. So there'll be training, installation of the software, engagement of African partner staff from the RSMCs. In conjunction, we'll be establishing the cloud computing environment to carry out the product development of the AMSAF, and we'll also be beginning the RAS station upgrade to access the polar orbiting satellite data. And EUMETSAT will continue its activities in conjunction with the AUC and in cooperation with CLIMSA in upgrade of the Puma stations, and we expect there to be an upgrade of the stations to access MTG data from 2027. So the final implementing partner, the ECMWF, are working on a slightly different approach in terms of their procurement. So you can see here how they're conducting their implementation activities for the project. So ECMWF are looking at initially defining the scope of the impact-based forecast to be delivered and developed for the African centres. So that scoping study will begin very soon. I don't think the partner who's been awarded that contract has been announced yet, but I believe it will be announced soon. So that scoping study will identify, as I said, the different areas of development for impact-based forecasting. And in parallel to this, they're also looking at grantees that would lead on regional pilots for impact-based forecasting demonstration tools. So there's initially calls for expression of interest, and there'll be a long list. And following this, there'll be a call for grants in which different partners can apply to actually lead these regional pilots. 4 grants will be awarded, and they're expected to begin in the latter half in Q4 of 2026. ECMWF will also be engaging directly through contracts the regional climate centres in Africa, so in South, East, Central and West Africa. And finally, just to mention that as a project, as implementing partners, we're very active in different African events. So you'll see here a big list of things that we're carrying out and being engaged in this year. So the African Climate Summit has just taken place. AUC were active there. This week has been the European Commission ARC-X Forum in Nairobi. So regional centres for research and development in different thematic areas have been meeting this week to identify synergies and how we can better work together for application of the different space-based data and products that we're developing on SEWA. There are some further activities coming up over the next couple of months that you can see here. So if anyone is going to be at these, please do feel free to get in touch. And if you would like any information on the specific events that ECMWF or EUMETSAT are running, so you can see here that we'll have a bidder information day with EUMETSAT for the invitation to tender on the AMSAF Technical Assistance Service. That's to be confirmed. And ECMWF are also running some sessions with the African Regional Climate Centres to talk about their involvement in the project too. We also have some events identified next year. So the EUMETSAT User Forum will have quite a big focus on SEWA in September 2026, and there'll be a big SEWA forum somewhere in Africa in 2027. And that's all from me. Sorry if I took a bit too long. Happy to take questions.
Thanks, Ifram. Thank you very much. And thanks to our speakers. Thank you, Lorraine, Cecilia, and Meshack. So we've got a small amount of time just to think about how we do the coordination and really leverage some of this activity to support the continental capacity building. We've got 3 questions to consider, which we'll probably just take all of them at the same time. So it's how do we actually maximize the capacity building impact of this? What are the opportunities for collaboration and support? And this, for me, I think is the big one for this forum. One of the roles of EOTEC DevNet is to bring things together, to glue stuff together so that it all works better. And what are some of the regional needs and perspectives? What I will do is if people raise their hands to discuss, and we'll draw on people as you raise your hands. Meshack, I would suggest to leave the last word to you as the AUC African Space Agency person. But if people have thoughts or comments, if you raise your hand and we will call you to speak, how can we really support each other and make this capacity building more coordinated? Please.
So thanks, Mark. Was that for me or there's some other?
I was going to leave the last word to you, but you may now. Okay. You have the first word. No, it's fine. You can no, Meshack. Don't leave. Yeah. You have the first word.
Okay. Yeah. So I think the main point here is about we have been emphasizing a lot on co-creation and co-development of services and product. I think there's a wide range of services that are coming up now, aside from the traditional EO. And like I said, there are 3 prongs for collaboration. There is the industrial partnership in which the startups community and that ecosystem partners, Europe and Africa partnership, in either creating joint ventures or creating one of these tenders. That's very specific to the private sector and other institutions. The tenders that have gone out, it's not just the private sector participating in them, but it's about institutions that are, public institutions that organize themselves into consortium or into consortia, and that consortium includes the private sector, it includes academia and other participants into it, and allowing them to, respond as a solid, as a solid consortium that will carry out a number of activities, which include trainings. It includes development of specific curriculum that will be channeled towards strengthening the private sector, strengthening the academia, and strengthening other portions of the tender of the program. The other one is about about the public institutions. About the public institutions collaboration. I think we have been very we have been very I would say deliberate on ensuring that there is that collaboration between the space agencies, because that's one of our mandates for the African Space Agency, to ensure that we have space agencies within the continent that are collaborating to respond to a particular issue. But also on the other hand is that, because this is a collaboration between Africa and Europe, there is that high level collaboration between African Space Agency and the European Space Agency. But then we are keen to bring other, space agencies at the national level to, come and participate in this particular program. And the whole thing and the whole objective here is to give us a lot of learning lessons on how we can proceed to more, programs that will come after that. Because we are testing some model in which, the public institutions working with academia and the private sector, both in Europe and Africa, can collaborate and derive and bring services not only in the downstream, but also upstream. And within that, if we learn a good lesson, it will shape and model the future programs that will come. And then, because we are all responding to the Global Gateway and the Africa Agenda 2063, we start to see how these data points are.
Okay. Cecilia, thank you, Meshack. Cecilia, I know you have to drop off soon. Is there anything you would like to say before you do?
Maybe something that sounds a bit more bureaucratic or less fascinating, but I do believe in order to maximize impact in a user-driven approach, like really trying to understand what are the needs, not only in terms of services, but also in terms of tools, like how, in order to increase the impact of a training, it has to be really tailor-made to the community that the training is addressing. In order for a program to run, we really need to understand what is needed on the beneficiary on the one who received the program, in order to make it working, to have a bigger impact, and eventually to strive for sustainability, which is always the big issue at the end of any kind of publicly funded program. That's also one of the reasons why we believe that involving the private sector can be fundamental for the impact. In terms of how to further enhance coordination, well, I was making a mistake while talking. I think it's about communication as well. And in that, certainly we can always do more in terms of advertising, reaching the community, making sure that the one who has the potential to benefit for something are aware of that thing that is going to happen. Communication is always like a nice word, and it is always seems very easy, but then in the end, there is always a community that is not reached. So we can always do more in terms of like letting everyone know, so sharing information. Voila. So that's my 2 points that sound maybe less fascinating, but I do believe they are still very relevant. User-driven approach and communication. Communication is about repetition, so continuing spreading the news and information that this opportunity exists. Also because the more this opportunity exists, the more the program will address real opportunity, because they will have interface with people that are actually going to use it. And so we can, again, going back to the user-driven approach, so making it better for the future and the next phases. So well, since I have the words and I need to drop, I would like to thank you very much, the organizer and the EODev community, for having me another time. If there are more questions for me, you can always reach out and I will provide in writing, and then you can disseminate to everyone. Thank you very much. Wishing you a very good rest of the day and the week.
Thank you, Cecilia, and a safe re-entry into your work environment. So questions to everyone now. I would wonder, just to take the theme of collaboration coordination, what about, because many of us in this call are actually not working at a high level or a senior level, we're very much at the practitioner level. So what opportunities are there for practitioner level coordination and cooperation and network development? Would anyone like to speak to that? And I don't think anyone has their hand raised. I think we're very shy. And I think we're shy because we're an Africa group and a Europe group. And we know each other in our individual contexts, but not together. So I encourage you, if you're from the Europe group, the Africa gang are lovely. And this is also true if you're from the Africa group. You are very welcome to speak up as well. Erin, did you have a thought there on that practitioner level coordination? I've seen you.
Well, I have a lot of thoughts because I think it's exactly what EOTEC wants to really engage in. It's really what we want to do is to try to maximize the reach of all of these investments. And Lorraine, I did have a question for you where you described that amazing program. Is that really targeted to certain med agencies or to the regional centers you mentioned, or is there? Will the training, for example, be open to people across the continent? And maybe that's a place where we can help is just promoting those opportunities so people know what is available to them. Thanks.
Thanks, Erin. Yeah, I can take that question. So we are working primarily with the regional specialized meteorological centers, as I mentioned. So we have 4 of them engaged, and then there's ACMAD as technical coordinator. So our main access point is those organizations, and that means that their staff do have to be trained. It's integral that they understand the software, its application, but we fully recognize that with those regional centers, they are serving their member Met services. So that covers much of Africa. And we fully want those staff from the National Met Services to be as involved as they can be as well. Of course, we have a finite budget. We're a project. We can't train everyone, but I think we have to fully think about the opportunities where we can engage people meaningfully and how we might go about doing that and reaching people with, training that might be in person, but other ways in which we can engage people, not just on the specific training, but the relevance of what we're doing. Ensuring that we can document training where possible so that we can share this so people might be able to access it. But this is something that we really have in mind, that it's not just about the centers that we're directly working with, we need to have broader reach as well.
Right. I'm just slightly conscious of the time. I look to see if anyone has a hand. Yeah, Nico, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Mark. During the previous presentations, a lot of mention was made of the involvement of academic institutions, space agencies, like EUMETSAT themselves, and the private sector. So we're talking here about, as you mentioned, the practitioner level, how can we enhance the coordination of especially the communication, knowledge transfer and training. And one of the probably very rudimentary things that came up, obviously we are talking continental wide knowledge transfer here. So, face-to-face training has its place, but in order to reach, to increase the reach, I think, what about the sort of a application webinar series where, for a number of series that focus on certain applications, whereby a lot of users can be reached, but also the expertise of all these institutions are then sort of pulled together in order to deliver this this training. So that is my input. Thank you.
Thanks, Nico. What I'll do is we'll take that question and a question from Gani, and then we'll ask Meshack and Lorraine to respond. Gani, please.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. And when it comes to bringing together and letting everybody knows what Africa and Europe, for example, is doing, I believe that we can use the African Space Agency or the African Union as a coordinating agency through their website for each of these partners to create a particular path in which everybody can have access and have information about what is available, because there's a lot that is going on across the regions. And if we create a kind of database of institutions that are participating in what program, in what projects, and those that are actually not participating, so that they can have the opportunity to participate, is very key. And I know there is a database of experts across Africa, especially on EU. The AUC should have that information. I think they have a database on that, so that everybody is aware of tremendous work that is going on across the regions. And the work of EOTEC DevNet in this respect, though it's a global network, but they have a particular one for African region. Some are actually not aware. Some are just, so we need to create some kind of awareness, put a lot of effort in trying to create awareness and making sure everybody is carried along. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would offer then, so Lorraine, if you want to make a brief comment, and then I offer the last word to Meshack from the AUC, African Space Agency, and then hand back to the Secretariat. So Lorraine first, and then Meshack.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so in response to Nico's comments, universities and training centres are, of course, really important, and we need to link those into this as well. I was just talking earlier to the Kenya Met department, and how we were talking about how universities actually provide some information on training and what's needed now in terms of new tools, etc., that maybe staff who were trained 10 years ago didn't have access to. So ensuring that we can create those links where it's possible and where it's meaningful and it can create sustainable training access, I think would be really useful. In terms of having access to different experts to understand what's going on, this is really important. I think one of the problems that we have in communities of practice is that there's no one that maybe has the mandate to share all this information. So ensuring that we have a sort of network of networks somehow that can be maintained and that can be updated so that people are accessing it. It's continual conversation. It's something that I think is really valuable.
Yeah, there is a place for EOTech to support this as that network of networks. I think this is great. Meshack, last word to you, please. If you're still there. Are you still there?
Yes, Mark.
Yes, you are.
Yes,
wonderful.
Mark, I can hear you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so to start with, whether it's early warning or applications or development of different thematic that we are looking at. So in all our project appraisals, we included the academia and the private sector. Whether they work collaboratively or differently, it's defined by each program. So for example, the training that is happening in October, it was divided into two. Those who are we were targeting the students and researchers that are in either at a PhD level or late master level. And then we also combined with those who are leading startups, so that evolution between, or that blending between the academia or those who are in the academia world and those who are in the startup community they come together for this training, and out of that, the research can be translated into innovation. So this is the approach in terms of the academia involvement, and so is the case in all the programs that we are defining, not only for Africa-EU partnership, but the programs that are, will be defined in the future. So the academia is very important. It's the third pillar for us, and the ecosystem of the startups and industry is also one of the important pillars, as well as the national institutions, which are the space agencies and regional space agencies. Now, for dissemination, Mark, what I can say, I think my takeaway from this point is that we need to make use of the EOTech community, because this, to me, feels like it's already a wider network that can be useful for dissemination of important information. I agree there is a gap in communication. It has not been very straightforward. It coincided with the time that when we also transitioning as the African space agencies, and there are no many hands on the table to do that. Probably using networks such as EOTech would be a very good opportunity to disseminate and to valorize this call.
Thank you very much indeed. Just before handing over to the Secretariat, Ifram, I want to make one observation. It's rather good to bring the groups we serve together. I like this. I wonder if we might do it again. But now I see you smiling. I see your heart as well. Great. I hand back to the Secretariat.